It is time for story time. Since I just learned something cool, I have to share it. So you've certainly heard of Knights Hospitalier, or the Order of Knights of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem. I mean, of course you have. It's these guys. Everyone knows them. They were one of the groups of knights who took part in the first crusade in the Levant. You know, the only successful crusade in the Levant. They got their name from running a few hospitals in occupied Jerusalem, where they grew their order and made fat stacks of gold. They only ruled for about 100 years until the Mamluks of Egypt kicked them all out. Not giving up so easily, the knights took refuge in Cyprus before they got bored of that and instead invaded the Byzantine Empire, specifically the island of Rhodes, which was under Byzantine rule at the time. And after a few years of siege, they conquered the island. For the next 100 years, they tried a few times to get all the boys together for more crusading in Anatolia, but only really succeeded in destroying one of the 7 ancient wonders of the world, the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus. A magnificent building they stripped bare to bolster their defenses, even though their defeat in Anatolia was inevitable. About 200 years later, the Ottomans sacked Constantinople and got really into killing knights, so they naturally set their eyes on the Knights of Rhodes. So Suleiman the Magnificent rounded up about 200,000 of his finest boys and began a siege against the 7,000 knights within Rhodes. The siege went as you might imagine, and the knights withdrew to Sicily. After a few years as vagabonds, the Pope, a knight himself you see, took pity on the knights and came to an agreement with a few kings of Europe to just give the island of Malta to the knights. The knights in turn founded Valletta and made Malta more or less everything we recognize it as today, even gave them their flag and everything. They held Malta against Ottoman invasions and Barbary pirates for another 250 years or so, until they got kicked off their island by the superior army of Napoleon, who definitely was average height for his time. Homeless yet again for the 3rd time, for those keeping count, finding them a new home was all the rage amongst European nobility. But here's the kicker. On the 19th of September in 1806, so like yesterday, none other than the Swedish government offered them the sovereignty over the island of Gotland, free of charge, ripe for the taking. Yet another brilliant plan by the otherwise arguably worst king in Swedish history. The knights rejected the offer sadly, since that would mean that they would need to give up their claim to Malta. What's even more ironic is that the Teutonic Knights, another group of knights from the First Crusade, also wanted the island as their own. So much in fact that they invaded and occupied the island around the time as the Knights Hospitalier were chilling in the sun on Rhodes. But just imagine the stationary aircraft carrier in the middle of the Baltic, ruled by a Catholic order of crusading knights from the First Crusade, but in a modern age.